Hello psychology folks, and welcome to our last video lecture. Actually, I think this is our last lecture of the class. So try to hold back the tears and no sobbing. It'll make it difficult to hear. Um, also got a good bit to go through, so I'll be moving through this fairly quickly. If you need to go back and need to pause and look at something again, might be helpful. But anyway, and we'll talk about what comes next regarding our next two exams, Exam 4 and the final at the end of the lecture. Talk about timing. You should already have the study sheet. If not, I believe I posted the study sheet for Exam 4 on Blackboard. I'll double check to make sure that's there. So we talked about and I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving. I did too. And yeah, welcome back. Talked about psychological disorders in our last video lecture. So in this lecture, we're going to talk about the treatment of psychological disorders, as well as some concepts in health psychology. Couple of interesting videos, particularly one that I want you to pay particular attention to because it's an interesting look at stress and how stress may actually be good for you. But getting started in talking about the treatment of psychological disorders, and this is a theme that's gone throughout the class this semester, we have the sort of familiar categories of biological, psychotherapy, sociocultural, uh, and similar to the approaches to psychology itself and the approaches to psychotherapy and also to personality. Biological therapies to address psychological issues include drug therapy. Drug therapy includes anti-anxiety drugs that reduce anxiety, that make individuals calmer and less excitable. They bind to neurotransmitter receptor sites. You remember from biology our little synaptic connection there, the synaptic cleft where the neurotransmitters go back and forth. They bind to overactive receptor sites and block the neurotransmitters that are causing the anxiety. Antidepressant drugs regulate mood by changing the level of neurotransmitters such as serotonin and norepinephrine. Antipsychotic drugs diminish agitated behavior, such as hallucinations and etc., by blocking the action of dopamine in the brain. But all of these function over here in the area where the neurotransmitters are traveling back and forth, are traveling from one nerve synapse to the other. That's one of the biological approaches, drug therapy. Other biological approaches to psychological issues include electroconvulsive therapy, also known as ECT, and essentially this is intentionally causing a seizure. And here you see a demonstration of somebody undergoing electroconvulsive therapy. You see they've got a protective guard in the person's mouth, and what they're doing is they're actually administering an electrical charge to the brain, causing a seizure, and they're weakening brain connections. You remember we talked a good bit about how brain connections form and actually physically strengthen. In this case, they're using the electrical charge to interrupt and weaken those brain connections. I think we showed the video of when we talked about lesioning and how they could temporarily lesion a brain by using an electromagnetic signal. Well, in this case, they're weakening brain connections and in very specific areas, and in order to, in most cases, treat severe depression. If they can get into the area of the brain, of the connections of the brain that are causing this severe, and we're not talking about bad moods. We're talking about people who are clinically severely depressed, who have no control over this. And when drugs are not effective, electroconvulsive therapy is something that has been shown to be effective as a last resort. Another type of psychological therapy is psychosurgery that involves actually removing parts of the brain tissue or destroying parts of the brain tissue. This is where in early days they would actually go into the prefrontal lobe, kind of using a metal spike and a hammer sometimes, and would damage the brain tissue in hopes of changing behavior. It is rarely used today. Would be only used in the most extreme cases, if at all. So those are your biological therapies. Psychological therapies are what you would typically think of when you think of treating psychological conditions, and they include, and this is the psychiatrist or the psychologist and the patient on the couch sort of scenario. Though I don't think many patients actually lie on couches anymore. Typically now they're sitting on them or on chairs. But the psychotherapy approaches would include psychodynamic therapy, which would be psychoanalysis. That's our good friend Sigmund Freud. And psychoanalysis would be trying to figure out what it is in your subconscious that's causing you to have problems. Humanistic psychotherapy would be something similar to Carl Rogers, client-centered therapy. You remember Rogers emphasized, unconditional positive regard, talking to somebody, creating a relationship with them as a therapist, and letting them know that they are unconditionally accepted, and hoping that that unconditional positive regard will cause the patient to feel better and to improve. Behavioral therapy, remember our good friend Skinner and conditioning. Behavioral therapy would involve things like desensitization. Let's say somebody who had a phobia of flying, underwent behavioral therapy. That might involve taking him to the airport and then taking them into the waiting room and then taking them almost down to the plane and eventually sitting on the plane and desensitizing them, helping them understand and helping their brains see that all of these fears that they have don't really occur. So that would be the desensitization part of behavioral therapy, or operant conditioning. Conditioning might involve, we talked in class about somebody who was trying to quit smoking. And let's say the therapist might say, put a rubber band around your wrist whenever you have the desire to smoke, snap the rubber band, cause yourself pain, and so you will condition yourself to not want to smoke because your brain won't want to experience that pain. Cognitive therapy, remember cognitive, that's thinking, that's using your brain to evaluate what's going on. One aspect of one type of cognitive therapy is called rational emotive behavior therapy, and that essentially is talking to a patient and having them think about why they feel and act the way they do, to rationalize it, to actually look at, does it make sense for me to be depressed? Does it make, am I really the most horrible person in the world? Well, no, you're really not. To help them understand rationally whether or not their feelings and beliefs make sense. And the idea is to eliminate these false and self-defeating feelings for the patient to actually see, what I'm thinking about myself isn't actually true, and to have that generate change. And then the integrative approach, which is incorporating some or all of these techniques, similar to our eclectic approach to psychology. And then you have the sociocultural approach to therapy, and that would include group therapy, where you have groups of people together talking to each other about what they're dealing with, gaining insight from each other, being encouraged by the group dynamic to open up and share. Family and couples therapy, bringing families and couples together when there are issues involving marriages or families. And then self-help support groups, which are groups that, if you've participated in any of those, you know how that works, where you have support outside the therapy session. And all of this is part of a socio-cultural approach, using our culture, using our connections with other human beings to improve our psychological situation. So we've talked about being psychologically sick. Let's talk about being psychologically healthy, or maybe getting psychologically healthier, either protecting our psychological health or improving it, and at the same time improving our physical situation. That may also help improve our psychological situation as well. And this is all part of health psychology. Health psychology emphasizes psychology's role in establishing and maintaining health and preventing and treating illness. Health psychology focuses on three areas that we've talked about: on behavioral, our behavior; social, our connection within our social circles; and our cognitive factors, our thinking and reasoning. And health psychology is typically divided into two areas: health promotion, which helps people change their lifestyle to optimize their health and help them achieve balance in their physical, emotional, social, spiritual, and intellectual health; and then public health, which is studying health and disease in large populations to help guide policymakers. And that would be your folks involved with the local health department, the Centers for Disease Control, etc. Both of these are majors that you can follow probably all the way up to, I know, up to a master's level, potentially up to a doctoral level in public health. And so you see a lot of this going on in the activities. We saw a lot of public health going on in dealing with the Ebola outbreak, with the CDC officials talking about how to manage patients who were coming over to this country. And then you saw a good bit of health promotion. Particularly, there's a lot of health promotion going on in West Africa, where teams are going out and trying to educate people on how to stay healthy. We have health promotion over here as well. With if you go to if you are a Facebook friend of Carillion Clinic, you'll see them push out a lot of information about healthy lifestyles, and that's health promotion. Health psychology follows the it'll take me a second to get this right. The biopsychosocial model. I want to say biopsychosocial model, because it integrates the biological, psychological, and social factors that are all involved in health. And in a nutshell, health psychology is about making positive life changes. If you've tried to make positive life changes, quitting smoking, losing weight, exercising more, sometimes it can be easier than others. But these are practices that can have an impact on our physical well-being, and even though we know they're good for us, sometimes it's not the easiest thing in the world to do. Two theories that are involved in health psychology and positive life change involve the theory of reasoned action, and that is that effective change requires individuals to have specific intentions and positive attitudes about a new behavior. In other words, if you know that you need to do a certain thing, whether let's say it's quit smoking, but honestly you don't really want to, and you don't think you can, or you don't think your life would be very enjoyable without it, you're not going to do it. It's pretty much required that if you're going to change that behavior, you have a specific intention to change, and that you have a positive attitude about what that change will mean. And then the other theory, the theory of planned behavior, is that a person's perception of control over their behavior is relevant. Do you really have control over whether or not you smoke? If you believe that you do, then it's more likely you will be able to achieve that goal. If you believe that it's an addiction, it's in my brain, I can't control, there's not really much I can do about it, I'll try. If you don't have a perception of control over that behavior, then it's going to be more difficult for you to change that behavior. So what happens when we change? This is the stages of change model in health psychology. The stages of change model involves 6 stages, essentially. Pre-contemplation. that's the stage where you're not really thinking about changing, but you're becoming aware, perhaps, of the consequences of your behaviors. And maybe, if you're a smoker, you're becoming aware of ways in which smoking is causing problems. Maybe maybe it's breath, or maybe you notice that your teeth are getting yellow, or other things where it's becoming less desirable, or you're getting a sense that something is not as good as it used to be about something. If it's drinking, perhaps you're noticing that your drinking is starting to affect your behavior, or your work, or so forth. A number of things that just start triggering that feeling that, this is probably not where I need to be. That's pre-contemplation. Contemplation is when you acknowledge there's a problem, but you are not at the point where you're willing, or at least determined, or maybe you just haven't figured out what it is you need to do to change it. But you acknowledge that there's an issue, and you may start evaluating what's going on in your life. This may be a situation where you've got some cognitive dissonance going on, where you start to feel that a behavior, or a life situation is not good for you, yet you continue to do it. This contemplation stage will then at some point lead you, if you are continuing on the stages of change model, to preparation, determination. At this point, as it says, you determine that you are going to make a change. This is where you say, okay, I'm going to quit smoking, I'm determined to do it, I'm going to stop drinking, I'm going to lose weight, and then you start making preparations to do that, whether that's looking up classes, or perhaps setting up a doctor's appointment, or maybe picking a quitting program if it's smoking or nicotine. And then that will move to the action stage, and that's the stage where you actually start the diet, give up the cigarettes, join the gym, and so forth. And then rolled in with the action stage is also the willpower stage, because that's the determination that allows you to keep going through those uncomfortable zones when you really want the cigarette, or you really want to drink, or you really don't want to exercise, or you really want to eat the entire buffet table. It's the willpower that gets you through. And then once you get through that process and reach the goal, then you have the maintenance stage of change, which is staying there, maintaining it, and keeping at that level. And so those are the 5 stages of change. And then unfortunately there is the 6th stage, which is relapse. Sometimes we fall off the wagon, and sometimes you for whatever reason, maybe it's stress, sometimes you fall back into your original behavior, which is going to start the cycle over again. And relapse does occur. I don't know if anybody has ever tried to quit smoking. It's fairly common that people trying to quit will relapse, and they'll smoke again during their attempts to stop. I've heard it said that some smokers will actually try to quit 6-7 times before it actually catches and it actually stays. So relapse can sometimes be a part of this stage of change, and it's important to realize that. It's important to realize that just because you relapse doesn't mean you throw the whole thing out the window and it's a failure. If you realize that relapse is part of that change process, and you understand, okay, relapse means you just go back through the cycle again, which hopefully will be easier now that you've gotten used to that, and eventually you'll come through and be able to stick with maintenance and you don't relapse. Important thing to consider, and it is part of those stages of change. So how do you get there? How do you get all the way through the stages of change to maintenance and avoid relapse? Important resources for effective life change, according to health psychologists, include motivation and then having social relationships or social support. Motivation, the drive that you have to actually see your goal through, includes something called self-determination theory. And self-determination theory distinguishes between intrinsic motivation, which is doing something because you want to do it, and extrinsic motivation, which is doing something for an external reward. Which of those do you think would be more likely to have you reach your health goal? Because external rewards are not always going to be there. If you run because it makes you feel good, it doesn't always make you feel good. And sometimes avoiding the big meal can make you feel good because you avoid. But sometimes you feel you really want to eat that big meal, and so the external reward motivation is not a consistent way to meet that goal. According to the self-determinationist theory, it's the intrinsic motivation, doing something because you want to do it, that will drive people more effectively toward their goal. Research has shown that if you feel more in control, more autonomous, in other words, it's your decision, and more competent, in other words, you have the ability to make this behavior change, you're more likely to achieve that. And they've looked at that in folks with diabetes, smokers who need exercise, and if they're driven by that internal motivation and people feel that they can reach their goal, they're more likely to actually reach their goal. And planning and goal setting is very important in that. If you set up a specific strategy, research has found that you are more likely to feel in control and competent and able to reach the goal. Particularly if you have small goals set throughout your process, each time you hit that small goal, that's going to make you feel more competent and able to reach that goal. Social relationships also very important in making positive health changes. Social support is key because it provides what they call tangible assistance. That's actual assistance, people who can actually reach out and help you in tangible ways when you're trying to make a positive change. Information, they can provide helpful information. Perhaps they've gone through something similar. They can sometimes help you cope with stress, and may notice when you're struggling and are able to reach out and help. And then emotional support, which is extremely important, particularly if people are dealing with anxiety, loss of self-esteem, losing that feeling that I can do this, that I can be better. They can provide that emotional support and help them manage their stress as well. And religious faith has also shown to be a positive effector of success when you're trying to make positive health changes. And of course, one of the reasons is fairly obvious, that the support, the support structure, the assistance, information, and emotional support are typically tied into the religious community. It's sort of a built-in support system that in the right situation can help you deal with making positive psychological change. Also, the personality characteristics of the person who is trying to make effective life change can have a difference in how effective and how successful they're going to be. Conscientiousness is extremely important. If you are not conscientious, you may be less likely to be able to manage and monitor your health situation. And that can be true of folks who are dealing with health issues such as blood pressure, diabetes. So a high level of conscientiousness is important. Personal control. If you feel in control of your life situation, you're going to be more able to deal with stress. And you're also going to be more likely to come up with problem-solving strategies. A sense of personal control can also indicate that you are at a lower risk for some chronic diseases such as cancer and cardiovascular disease. This could be because reducing stress by having that sense of personal control also reduces some of these stress risk factors for cancer and heart disease that we'll talk about in just a minute. Uh, that also tends to help people avoid risky lifestyles, and be less likely to engage in unhealthy behavior to deal with stress. Also, and somewhat similar to that, is self-efficacy, which means the person's belief that you can master a situation and create positive outcomes. So if you have a high sense of self-efficacy, might say, self-confidence may be another phrase to use. If you have high self-confidence, you may be more able to engage in an effective life change strategy. And then optimism is important. You have to have some belief that you can be successful. If you are pessimistic, then you're more likely to engage in behaviors that may defeat your effective life change goals. So having an optimistic attitude, and sometimes that's just telling yourself that you can in fact do it, or having folks in your support the support circle around you telling you that you can do it. All of this are very important for being successful in making effective life change. So one of the ways psychologists say that we can be healthier, both physically and psychologically, is by controlling stress. Now, caveat, I'm going to talk about what the book says about controlling stress, and then at the end of the lecture, I've got a video that has a different perspective on stress that I think it's important to get, but we'll get to that in a minute. What causes stress? Stress, according to the book, is caused by gas, and not, well, that kind of gas does cause stress, but this gas is the general adaptation system, something designed by an individual named Hans Selye. I'm not sure I'm even saying that right. But essentially, Hans says that there are three stages of stress. There is the alarm stage, where your body is shocked by whatever it is that's stressing you out and floods your body with a whole bunch of hormones. The hormones are these are the fight or flight hormones that help you react, but aren't necessarily good for you in large doses. Then there is the resistance stage, where your body, your endocrine glands manufacture hormones that try to protect you, increase your immune system, fight off whatever it is that's causing the stress. And then the exhaustion stage, where your body essentially wears out and becomes vulnerable. The exhaustion stage, when the body sort of loses its ability to protect itself, can according to scientists cause damage, sometimes irreversible damage. This is where you end up with your heart attack, stroke, and so forth. And so this can be a particularly bad thing. And according to Hans, the body system that's involved in this is the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. They call it the HPA axis. It involves in this alarm resistance, the pumping out of adrenaline and so forth, and then the eventual exhaustion. So, how do you control gas? Or in other words, how do you control stress? It's important because stress in the immune system, at least according to the book, can have some significantly bad effects. It can lower the efficiency of the immune system. It can directly promote disease-producing processes. So it can actually help diseases propagate more effectively through your body, and it can even, and I thought this was interesting, it can activate dormant viruses. So if you actually have viruses in your body that are maybe held dormant by your immune system or aren't doing anything, it can actually activate those viruses. I've read of situations where a stress or trauma can actually activate the body's immune system to create diabetes in adults. And then in regards to cancer, stress has been shown to inhibit immune responses that can help us resist and slow cancer growth. And so in this case, stress could make us more susceptible to cancer. Stress is also has been indicted in the past in cardiovascular disease, and you've probably heard about the Type A behavior pattern. The Type A folks, excessively competitive, hard-driven, impatient, and hostile. And at one point, that was also linked to stress, and so Type A and heart disease were connected. Interestingly, it came from what's called the waiting room chair discovery. Three cardiologists, doctors Meyer, Friedman, and or actually two cardiologists, Meyer, Friedman, and Ray Rosenham, were having a problem with their waiting room chairs. The waiting room chairs were wearing out, and at least one of the stories that I've read is they brought in an upholsterer who looked at the chairs and said, "What's wrong with your patients? Chairs don't wear out this way." And what they had found was the chairs were worn on the front edges, and the arms of the chairs were worn in the front, not along the back. And they came to believe that the reason these cardiologist chairs were wearing out along the front is because their patients were actually sitting on the edges of the chairs, ostensibly because of their mental state, their stress, their anxiety, and that was causing the front of the chairs to wear out. Now, I've also read that they actually didn't discover this until, or didn't become aware of this until later in their research. But they did some research and looked at the Type A personalities to see if that was a risk factor in coronary artery disease. And their study showed that standard risk factors such as smoking, cholesterol, and high blood pressure were significantly higher in Type A's. And they actually wrote a best-selling book about that. And the Type A, the Type A personality, was even considered by the NIH to be a significant risk factor among middle-aged workers, independent of smoking or cholesterol or hypertension, and just as serious. Interestingly, several studies after Friedman and Rosenman were not able to duplicate that connection between the Type A personality and cardiac disease. One of the problems is because Type A means different things to different people. It was more difficult to research and to confirm, and they came to a conclusion that it appeared that hostility may be what they called the core component of the Type A personality that actually was connected to that coronary artery disease. So there does seem to be a connection, but not so much that it's Type A's that have a higher risk, but maybe hostile Type A's. Well, this is interesting. This was actually an appointment calendar taken from the desk of a patient, and if you look at that, you can actually see what's going on in this person's day. See the boss early, something about a meeting, deliveries, rush, need to get it out on time, no matter what, hurry, what's holding this thing up, and then talks about seeing Blake pronto, and then catching the 5:43 train for a PTA meeting. And this individual actually died of a heart attack while catching that train. And so, they look at this guy's day, and you wonder how much of this stress of his day, maybe is this a Type A day, was connected to the heart attack that he had. It's definitely something to think about. In controlling stress, stress and cardiovascular disease, it's the Type D, what they call the Type D behavior pattern, that seems to be the worst. And this also seems to connect with the thinking that it was hostility in the Type A folks that was most predictive of problems. Type D is generally distressed and negative emotions, socially inhibited, so you can see sort of hostility built in that. And those individuals, some research shows, have a threefold increase of having a bad cardiovascular outcome. So if you can not be this, it's much better for your heart. Stress and cancer too. Talked about that earlier. Causes changes in the immune system. Cellular immune response is inhibited, and your natural killer cells are diminished as well. So, how do you control stress? One of the ways you control stress is by cognitive appraisal. And in other words, cognitive, remember, thinking. That's an individual's interpretation of an event as either harmful or threatening, whether or not he or she has the resources to effectively cope. So if you see something happening and you don't feel that you can cope with it, you're going to view that as much more stressful. So if you can improve your coping ability, both problem-focused coping and emotion-focused coping. Problem-focused coping is being able to cope with specific things that are happening in your life, like a test coming up, or something else that's going to happen to you that you want to have the skills to be able to deal with. Emotion-focused coping is being able to deal with your feelings and being able to have strategies that effectively help you cope with those feelings. If you can have some sort of coping mechanism for both problems that may occur and emotions that you may deal with, you're going to be more able to control your stress, and that's a type of cognitive appraisal. Stress management programs are things that are often now more often offered by employers to help their employees deal with stress and hopefully be healthier, which for the employer means fewer healthcare costs. That's an example of a stress management program that's marketed to employers, the eMindful program that offers weekly classes, live online, things like mindfulness in your day, stop reacting, start responding, mindful eating, overcoming obstacles. Thoughts are not facts. Remember the idea that people get thoughts in their head that may not be true. This is all very much a cognitive type of approach to dealing with stress. And so healthy behavior can be one of the keys to having a less stressful and a more psychologically positive life. Here's an example of I just lost it. Here's an example of healthy behavior and how it's improved the lives of these individuals through a program that they went through.
And now for a story you'll see only here on Fox 6. Depending on how you look at it, time can either work for you or it can work against you.
Speaking of time, for 6 months, Fox 6, we've been following a group from the Sheboygan area. They're trying to get healthier, exercise, all that stuff. Jonathan Gregg caught up with them. He says they say that time is now on their side.
There are many ways to measure success.
Oh, yeah.
Benchmarks that can be seen and felt.
I wanted to stop being the blob in blue.
The biggest one I had was to quit smoking. We wanted to start a family, and I knew I had to make changes in order for that to happen.
They are goals often shared but frequently missed. Dennis, Tommy, and Kimberly have all tried before to lose weight.
It definitely wasn't the first time I thought I needed to lose weight.
Quit smoking.
If there was an excuse prior to the challenge, I used it.
To have a family.
And my weight had gotten to the point in which it was causing infertility issues with me.
This time, it would be different. These three, along with 3 others, were picked to join Prevea's Health's Change Your Game Challenge. 6 months to transform the way we make goals and reach them. Lessons in nutrition and physical fitness, making seemingly small changes, but getting bigger and bigger results.
The thing between you and your goals is just empty space filled with excuses.
And not letting time corner you.
Just making time for myself. Yesterday morning, for example, I had 15 minutes. So I went to the gym and ran 1 mile and went to work. But just make sure I did something that day to accomplish it.
Each had their own turning point when the pressure they felt from others to do well changed into motivation coming from within. For Tommy Genske, it came in the form of running a race, a smoker's worst nightmare.
We had set a goal of running a 5K at the end of the challenge. I was surfing around Facebook one day and saw that there was a race, the Santa Hustle, in Milwaukee, and it was in December. and I wanted to do it. So we pushed that goal ahead by 3 months.
She ran, finished, and survived.
That was the start of checking all of these goals off of my list, knowing that I accomplished one, I've got 10 more I can do.
Jenske has been smoke-free for 5 months. Dennis Erdley has lost 45 pounds and hasn't felt this good in years. Kimberly Hahn has lost 40 pounds. Still, her ultimate goal is to start a family.
Knowing that the weight that I have lost is only going to help with getting pregnant, it's going to help carry the baby and also make a healthier life for the child growing up. And I'll be there a lot longer for he or her.
And even though the challenge is over, their pursuit for health is not. The way they see it, they have all the time in the world and might as well spend it living well. In Kohler, Jonathan Gregg, Fox 6 News.
That story is a great example of the stages of change model, because you saw examples in those stories of the pre-contemplation, contemplation, preparation, determination, action, willpower, and then having to go on with maintenance, and hopefully those folks won't relapse. Now, the next thing I need to tell you is that what you just learned about stress may be hazardous to your health. And this is not in the book, but when I saw this this TED Talk video, it was too important not to share, because it's a different look at stress, in that according to this health psychologist, it's not the stress that's harmful, it's what you think about the stress and how you react to it and how you feel about it that could actually make a physical difference in whether stress is good or bad for your body. So let's take a look at this and see what you think.
I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone? Mm-hmm. How about a moderate amount of stress? Who's experienced a lot of stress? Yeah, me too. But that is not my confession. My confession is this: I'm a health psychologist, and my mission is to help people be happier and healthier. But I fear that something I've been teaching for the last 10 years is doing more harm than good, and it has to do with stress. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. It increases the risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Basically, I've turned stress into the enemy. But I've changed my mind about stress. And today, I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that made me rethink my whole approach to stress. This study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years. And they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who died. Okay, some bad news first. People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including people who had relatively little stress. Now, the researchers estimated that over the 8 years they were tracking deaths, 182,000 Americans died prematurely, not from stress, but from the belief that stress is bad for you. That is over 20,000 deaths a year. Now, if that estimate is correct, That would make believing stress is bad for you the 15th largest cause of death in the United States last year, killing more people than skin cancer, HIV, AIDS, and homicide. You can see why this study freaked me out. Here I've been spending so much energy telling people stress is bad for your health. So this study got me wondering, can changing how you think about stress make you healthier? And here the science says yes. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress. Now, to explain how this works, I want you all to pretend that you are participants in a study designed to stress you out. It's called the social stress test. You come into the laboratory and you're told you have to give a 5-minute impromptu speech on your personal weaknesses to a panel of expert evaluators sitting right in front of you. And to make sure you feel the pressure, there are bright lights and a camera in your face, kind of like this. And the evaluators have been trained to give you discouraging nonverbal feedback, like this. Now that you're sufficiently demoralized, time for part 2, a math test. And unbeknownst to you, the experimenter has been trained to harass you during it. Now, we're gonna all do this together. It's gonna be fun, for me. Okay. I want you all to count backwards from 996 in increments of 7. You're gonna do this out loud as fast as you can, starting with 996. Go. Go faster. Faster, please. You're going too slow. Stop, 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 stop. That guy made a mistake. We're gonna have to start all over again. You're not very good at this, are you? Okay, so you get the idea. Now, if you were actually in this study, you'd probably be a little stressed out. Your heart might be pounding, you might be breathing faster, maybe breaking out into a sweat. And normally we interpret these physical changes as anxiety or signs that we aren't coping very well with the pressure. But what if you viewed them instead as signs that your body was energized, was preparing you to meet this challenge? Now, that is exactly what participants were told in a study conducted at Harvard University. Before they went through the social stress test, they were taught to rethink their stress response as helpful. That pounding heart is preparing you for action. If you're breathing faster, it's no problem. It's getting more oxygen to your brain. And participants who learned to view the stress response as helpful for their performance, well, they were less stressed out, less anxious, more confident. But the most fascinating finding to me was how their physical stress response changed. Now, in a typical stress response, your heart rate goes up and your blood vessels constrict like this. And this is one of the reasons that chronic stress is sometimes associated with cardiovascular disease. It's not really healthy to be in this state all the time. But in the study, when participants viewed their stress response as helpful, their blood vessels stayed relaxed like this. Their heart was still pounding, but this is a much healthier cardiovascular profile. It actually looks a lot like what happens in moments of joy and courage. Over a lifetime of stressful experiences, this one biological change could be the difference between a stress-induced heart attack at age 50 and living well into your 90s. And this is really what the new science of stress reveals, that how you think about stress matters. So my goal as a health psychologist has changed. I no longer want to get rid of your stress. I want to make you better at stress. And we just did a little intervention. If you raised your hand and said you'd had a lot of stress in the last year, we could have saved your life. Because hopefully the next time your heart is pounding from stress, you're going to remember this talk and you're going to think to yourself, this is my body helping me rise to this challenge. And when you view stress in that way, your body believes you and your stress response becomes healthier. Now, I said I have over a decade of demonizing stress to redeem myself from. So we are going to do one more intervention. I want to tell you about one of the most underappreciated aspects of the stress response, And the idea is this: stress makes you social. To understand this side of stress, we need to talk about a hormone, oxytocin. And I know oxytocin has already gotten as much hype as a hormone can get. It even has its own cute nickname, the cuddle hormone, because it's released when you hug someone. But this is a very small part of what oxytocin is involved in. Oxytocin is a neurohormone. It fine-tunes your brain's social instincts. It primes you to do things that strengthen close relationships. Oxytocin makes you crave physical contact with your friends and family. It enhances your empathy. It even makes you more willing to help and support the people you care about. Some people have even suggested we should snort oxytocin to become more compassionate and caring. But here's what most people don't understand about oxytocin. It's a stress hormone. Your pituitary gland pumps this stuff out as part of the stress response. It's as much a part of your stress response as the adrenaline that makes your heart pound. And when oxytocin is released in the stress response, it is motivating you to seek support. Your biological stress response is nudging you to tell someone how you feel instead of bottling it up. Your stress response wants to make sure you notice when someone else in your life is struggling so that you can support each other. When life is difficult, your stress response wants you to be surrounded by people who care about you. Okay, so how is knowing this side of stress going to make you healthier? Well, oxytocin doesn't only act on your brain, it also acts on your body. And one of its main roles in your body is to protect your cardiovascular system from the effects of stress. It's a natural anti-inflammatory. It also helps your blood vessels stay relaxed during stress. But my favorite effect on the body is actually on the heart. Your heart has receptors for this hormone. And oxytocin helps heart cells regenerate and heal from any stress-induced damage. This stress hormone strengthens your heart. And the cool thing is that all of these physical benefits of oxytocin are enhanced by social contact and social support. So when you reach out to others under stress, either to seek support or to help someone else, you release more of this hormone, your stress response becomes healthier, and you actually recover faster from stress. I find this amazing that your stress response has a built-in mechanism for stress resilience. And that mechanism is human connection. I want to finish by telling you about one more study. And listen up, because this study could also save a life. This study tracked about 1,000 adults in the United States, and they ranged in age from 34 to 93. And they started the study by asking, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, how much time have you spent helping out friends, neighbors, people in your community? And then they used public records for the next 5 years to find out who died. Okay, so the bad news first. For every major stressful life experience, like financial difficulties or family crisis, that increased the risk of dying by 30%. But, and I hope you are expecting a but by now, but that wasn't true for everyone. People who spent time caring for others showed absolutely no stress-related increase in dying, 0. Caring created resilience. And so we see once again that the harmful effects of stress on your health are not inevitable. How you think and how you act can transform your experience of stress. When you choose to view your stress response as helpful, you create the biology of courage. And when you choose to connect with others under stress, you can create resilience. Now, I wouldn't necessarily ask for more stressful experiences in my life, but this science has given me a whole new appreciation for stress. Stress gives us access to our hearts. a compassionate heart that finds joy and meaning in connecting with others, and yes, your pounding physical heart working so hard to give you strength and energy. And when you choose to view stress in this way, you're not just getting better at stress, you're actually making a pretty profound statement. You're saying that you can trust yourself to handle life's challenges. And you're remembering that you don't have to face them alone. Thank you. Thank you.
So some interesting things there from Kelly McGonigal. In fact, that's going to be our response question, is a question about her lecture. I know that was a little long, but I thought it was important. And there are other studies and surveys that seem to indicate similar things, that stress is not necessarily always bad. One study from last year found that getting excited helps you with performance anxiety more than trying to calm down. If you motivate yourself and get excited about what you're doing versus trying to slow your breathing and calm yourself down, you can do better at, say, giving a speech or maybe even taking a test. In this experiment, they actually used public speaking, and they had people either say, I am excited, or I am calm, and the people who said they were excited did better on the test. Again, they even did it with karaoke, and they found that that would be an interesting experiment to do. But they found that the individuals who said they were excited about singing in front of other people actually did a better job. And the idea being, when you're anxious, you're possibly ruminating too much and focusing on potential threats rather than focus on potential opportunities. If you focus on opportunities, then you tend to perform better. And in these experiments, they said that even if people didn't believe it, simply saying, I'm excited, verbalizing it, increases your feeling of excitement and improves your performance. So when we have the test coming up, say you're excited, and maybe your performance will improve. All right, so here is the response question for this video lecture. What do you think about Kelly McGonigal's view of stress? Can the stress in your life be turned into something positive simply by changing the way you view your stress? What do you think? Click reply and post your thoughts. Also, what's coming up next on the 5th, this coming Friday, is test number 4. And then on the 12th will be the final exam. If you have an A in the class, you do not have to take the final. Make sure you check Blackboard and make sure that you do have an A. Writing assignments, I'm not sure why that says Tuesday 4/29. That's wrong. The last day to give the writing assignments to me in class will be on the 12th, the day of the final exam. But they are actually due absolutely positively by midnight Wednesday the 17th, because I have to post the grades on the 18th. And so if you don't have it done by Friday the 12th, then email it to me before the end of the day on Wednesday the 17th, and I will be able to apply that to your grade. And with that, and there will, after test 4, there'll be no final. There'll be no more video lectures. You'll have the rest of that time to study for the final, which, as I think I've mentioned, will be taken from all the test questions from your exams, and I'll email you your corrected copies of test 4. And that'll wrap it up for this video lecture. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you Friday.